International Day of Yoga is coming up on the 21st of June. So naturally, I wanted to make a video as I knew yoga had immense benefits for singers, as well as being a favorite self-care pastime for many. But I quickly realized one video wouldn't be enough. So welcome to this 4-part YouTube mini-series where we are going on an adventure. We are going to explore how yoga can transform your singing technique as well as leveling up your self-care practice. Over the next 4 weeks, you are going to hear from some wonderful people who are not only yoga teachers from various disciplines, but professional singers themselves. And I'm going to be a guinea pig and trial the things that we talk about. So if you are also new to yoga, we can buddy up and do it together. So it's going to be fun, so make sure you click on the bell icon when you subscribe so you get notified when each video in this series goes live. Let's go! Hello lovely ones, this is Livia. I'm a professional operatic soprano, voice teacher and the founder of Singing for Self-Care. If you like health and heart-based singing, I highly suggest you subscribe because I'm here for you every Monday with tips on your most powerful method of self-care, your voice. Because remember, you and your voice are practically magic. So in preparation for this video, I changed up my morning routine to include a 15-minute yoga warm-up. And frankly, I was pretty shocked at how deeply it just not only prepared my body for singing, but also just for the whole day in general. So I do tend to stretch in the mornings, but I usually need to stretch for much longer to feel warmed up. And even then, it wasn't to the extent of what this warm-up did. So what I particularly like about this warm-up is that it is aimed with singers in mind. So it really opens up parts of the body that are extra important for singing. Although there are definitely a lot of whole body movements included. If you're keen to give this warm-up a try, I will link it here. Rosie over at Vox Yoga, who created this video, will be our special guest on episode 3. So if you enjoy her yoga warm-up for singers as much as I do, make sure you jump over to her channel and give her some love. So I found that with COVID and moving all of my work online that I am sitting more than I ever have in my life. And I did notice that there has been a slight detriment to my singing. So when I'm passively breathing, so when I'm not thinking about breathing, it is quite diaphragmatic. So I do automatically belly breathe, which is good. However, diaphragmatic breathing is only maybe 80% of the breathing that we do when we're singing. We do really want to include our intercostal muscles too. So these are the muscles that are in between our ribs. Singers will often refer to this as a feeling of opening the rib cage. So I realized my intercostal muscles have fallen asleep with all the sitting I've been doing. So even when I try to engage them to sing. Now chances are, if you have a similar lifestyle where you're working behind a computer, yours might have fallen asleep too. Or perhaps you just always have this sore neck and shoulders from like craning your head to look at screens, or your hamstrings are just like chronically tight. So these are all common body complaints of people who spend a lot of time in the office. It's a little personal goal that I'm setting myself this month as I start to practice yoga, is to feel more open in my rib cage. So if you come along for the journey with me, I encourage you to set a goal for yourself too and write it down in the comments. Okay, so let's get into the specifics. Why including yoga into your routine is a great idea if you're a singer. Both yoga and singing are very closely tied with the breath. The method of inhalation in yoga aligns very much with the inhalation that we use with singing, in that it encourages the most efficient means of breathing. So in both yoga and singing, we focus on diaphragmatic breathing and the feeling of expanding the rib cage, all whilst keeping the abdominal muscles nice and loose. So each asana or yoga position is associated with a fluid pattern of inhalation and exhalation, much the same as singing a phrase of music. But on top of this, yoga encompasses various methods of breath work or pranayama. Breathwork is something that has gathered a lot of momentum in the West over the last few years, and it's actually kind of become quite trendy with the rising popularity of people like Wim Hof, the Iceman. But pranayama has been a cornerstone in many disciplines of yoga for hundreds of years. So we're going to be looking at breathwork in detail next episode with the wonderful yoga teacher and singer Eloise Sand of Breath Incorporated New York. If you feel like you aren't breathing as deeply or efficiently as you can, or that you're aware that you're holding your breath, particularly at the tops of phrases, exploring pranayama could be a very rewarding option for you. Now, if you start to incorporate any type of breath work, whether it be traditional pranayama or a more modern technique, do use caution and common sense. If anything is uncomfortable, stop. Don't practice pranayama in a dangerous environment, and of course, check with your doctor first, especially if you have a known medical condition. If you think back to your very first singing lesson, chances are the first thing you worked on with your teacher is posture. It seems obvious, but it's very much worth investing some time in optimizing this basic part of technique and finding a good alignment. So if you don't have an awareness of your posture, some muscle groups may become over-engaged to compensate for other muscle groups being under-engaged. And this is largely responsible for one of the most common vocal issues, tension. Yoga increases our mind-body awareness, so we are more conscious of our posture and can move into a more efficient alignment. Core strength comes hand in hand with posture, as the stronger our core, the easier we can maintain a nice alignment. This comes particularly in handy if you are ever in a stage production, if you ever need to sing in an unusual position, or even if you sing accompanying yourself regularly with a keyboard, guitar, or some other instrument, particularly if you're in a seated position. But where a strong core particularly shines is when we talk about breath support or appoggio. It's a slightly complicated topic, which we will talk about and demystify in episode 3 as we chat to Rosie Secker from Vox Yoga. Singing is a very active exercise and it requires balance. If you don't use the larger, efficient muscle groups to support your voice, you will develop tension elsewhere, like your tongue or your jaw or your neck. And this is just as a means of compensation. So this was an issue that I struggled with as a young singer for many years. Not to mention that without adequate support, there is an increased likelihood of vocal injuries. So it's important to know which muscles to engage in singing and how without gripping or pushing or holding. And it may be a little bit of a tricky thing to get right, especially in the beginning of our singing journey when we're still working on our coordination, and especially if we don't have a highly developed sense of body awareness. So yoga is truly wonderful here. I would go as far to say that it's a game changer. If you have ever felt confused about what breath support is, or you feel yourself consistently pushing or conversely under singing, bringing yoga into your routine could be highly beneficial. Not only are you developing your core muscles, which are fundamental to efficient support, you also learn how to find and involve these muscles in an organic way, maintaining this flexible engagement without feeling like you're pushing or straining. Probably the first thing most people think about when they think of yoga is flexibility. One of the great things about yoga is the inclusion of both static and active stretches. So the combination of which tends to really nicely open up the body. But in this series, you will see that it is so much more than that. So as I mentioned previously, so many of us singers struggle with muscular tension. And unfortunately, just telling ourselves to relax is not a particularly constructive option. However, when we are actively stretching and moving our muscles, the tension does start to melt away. So it's no surprise that yoga is a wonderful way to combat tension as we sing. The concept of mobility and actually starting to vocalize in your yoga practice is going to come in our final episode when we talk to the lovely soprano and yoga teacher Isa Luki of Sat Voice. It's important to have a solid understanding of the relationship between the breath and the body before attempting to sing in a pose or asana. But once you're ready to take that step, that's where you may see the most dramatic transformation in your singing. One of my big philosophies as a singing teacher is treating our singing practice as meditation in movement. This not only focuses us in the present moment, but also has many more wonderful psychological effects, such as building technique more quickly and consistently because we're focused on the process and not the results, removing self-doubt, self-criticism and analysis paralysis, and finding joy in the sensation of singing. Now, anyone who has practiced yoga before understands this sense of mindfulness comes quite organically with one or two bodily focuses, whether it be in the asana or pranayama. We naturally fall into a pattern of meditative thinking and we let go of our judgments. As with doing anything, thanks to neuroplasticity, the more we get into this meditative flow with movement, the easier it becomes. So for singers who find themselves having difficulty shaking an inner critical voice as they're singing, bringing yoga into your routine may be useful in helping you reprogram this pattern. Now we've had a bit of a bird's eye view into just how beneficial yoga can be for your singing, I invite you on this journey with me. Make sure you click the bell icon so you can follow through each week as I post a new episode. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next Monday. Bye!